All right, welcome everybody. This is Brian Hartman at Pharus Global headquarters. We're at 1859 Southeast Port St. Lucie Boulevard in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Come by and see us. We have some great coffee and occasionally some good donuts too. At Pharus Global, we like to say that we can help businesses from the cradle all the way to the grave, or some people would prefer exit strategy. Depending on how you look at it. So happy to assist. You can find us at pharusglobal.com. I am very excited today that we have with us live in the studio, Mr. Harry Moser. Harry is the founder of the Reshoring Initiative after being president of machine tool maker GF Machining Solutions for 22 years. Awards include Industry Week's Manufacturing Hall of Fame, SPE's Mold Designer of the Year, and Fab Shop Direct's Manufacturer of the Year. He participated actively in President Obama's 2012 Insourcing Forum at the White House, and he's a member of the Department of Commerce Investment Advisory Council, frequently quoted in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, New York Times, and also seen on national TV and radio programs. So guys, we're in for a real treat tonight. He has his Bachelor's of Science and Master's in Engineering from MIT and MBA from the University of Chicago. And without further ado, let's welcome Harry Moser.
Hi, Brian. It's good to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to work with you and to meet so many of your attendees and participants.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you, Harry. It's been a long time coming. You're very highly sought after, so it was hard to get you into the calendar, but we appreciate you being here. So tonight we're going to be talking about how to get more than your share of reshoring of work coming back to the U.S. from offshore. I know a lot of people are going to be excited to hear about this, Harry, especially in light of what's been going on recently. Probably even more activity happening in that aspect. So why don't you start off, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your background, Harry.
Well, you already gave a lot, and I got a lot to live up to here.
That's right.
I think most relevant. I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is right across the river from New York City. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing in town was Singer Sewing Machine. That was their main factory. It's where everything got started. And back maybe 110, 120 years ago, the factory there was the biggest manufacturing facility anywhere in the world. It had 2.5 million square feet, 5,000 workers. It was a Goliath of its time. And my grandfather was a foreman. My dad ran about a third of the factory. I worked there summers in high school and college. And 20 years ago, I went past, and nothing of Singer is made there anymore. Everything that they sell, as far as I can tell, everything is imported from somewhere outside the country.
Unreal.
And I drove past. I cried for what the city, the state, the country, my family had lost from that decline. And during my career, I sold CNC machine tools like GF Machining Solutions, also foundry equipment. So big, heavy capital stuff. And industry after industry, company after company that I wanted to sell something to, they went out of business. They got wiped out by imports. The shoe equipment makers and textile machinery makers and foundry equipment just destroyed. So I said, when I retire, which was 2010, that I'm going to do something about it. So I founded the nonprofit Reshoring Initiative to turn that around.
Awesome. That's excellent. Yeah, I guess it was kind of like the equivalent of Amazon running off all the retail stores today. That's what was happening in the manufacturing world back then in the U.S., right?
Has happened. It happened. It really started in, say, 1970, 1980. Our trade balance went negative in 1980, and it's gotten worse consistently ever since then. And it was sort of like Amazon, but at least with Amazon, it got replaced more or less by Amazonians, replacing other retailers. In our case, it was U.S. being replaced by Mexicans, Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, India, somewhere. And that's great for them, but it's not good for us.
That's very true. So I know we briefly touched it already, but what's the mission of the Reshoring Initiative?
Basically, to balance the trade deficit. So the trade deficit in recent years has been about 800 to 900 billion with a B, 800 to 900 billion dollars per year. And that amount of work, if it were done here, to achieve balance, to achieve imports equals exports, okay? Not a big circle, balance. But to achieve balance would increase the U.S. total manufacturing workforce by about 5 million jobs, okay? 5 million generally well-paid, well compensated jobs with good career. And in addition, manufacturing has the best multiplier effect. So when you bring back 5 million manufacturing jobs, you bring back somewhere between 5 and 15 million hamburger flippers and lawyers to sue them, and all the other stuff that comes along. And so the U.S. would be a dramatically different country if we had not lost those 5 million. So my mission, our mission, is to get the 5 million back.
And I know we also talked about the trade deficit, but is that the main reason why we have such a large trade deficit?
Meaning imports?
Mm-hmm.
The imports is the trade deficit. So the trade deficit is imports minus exports. Mm-hmm. And we don't do very well on exports because we're too expensive. And we don't do very well fighting imports because we're too expensive, So companies, Walmart, is the classic example. But individual companies, General Motors, Whirlpool, whatever, when they go out and they say, where am I going to get either the complete product, Barbie doll, whatever, or where am I going to get the components to go into the car or the dishwasher or whatever. And when they see that they can get them in Europe for 20% less than here, and in China for 30%, 35% less than here, very hard to say not to do that, especially because when their competitors are doing that and the price in the marketplace, the retail price comes down, you either go along or you go away. And I'm sure that's why Singer did it. I'm sure they replaced domestic production with foreign production because they could get, in today's dollars, the worker would be making $20 here an hour, and over there they can find someone to do it for $3 or $2. That's tough.
What do you think it would do, assuming that we can bring the work back to the U.S.? How does that affect training and facilities and everything that would be needed here in the States?
Now, if you bring bring back 5 million, 40% increase in manufacturing output, because we have 12 million now, so 40% of 12, about 5. And so we need about 50% more, or more, about 40% more space. So it's a substantial increase in space, about 40% more workforce. With a tendency towards higher skilled, higher automation jobs, because to get it to come back, you've got to automate. If you try and bring it back at the same level of productivity that it went away at 20 years ago, or that the Chinese or Indians are using now, and you bring it back and you've still got wages 4 times as high, you're going to lose. It's not going to stay here. So it tends to come back at a relatively higher level of automation, but it's going to take 40% more space and 40% more people, and some of them are going to be engineers and fancy, and some are going to be just the people you need in any company to get the job done. And it's important. I always say it's important to have some jobs for the people that are not rocket scientists, the ones who couldn't go to MIT or didn't want to go to MIT, and because those people need jobs too. And if they don't have jobs, they're going to be on welfare. They're going to be unhappy. And the best thing I think for most people psychologically is a good job that they can feel good about, and where they can rise, where there's career opportunities and get some training and get better and get paid more. So
totally makes sense. So, I think a lot of people probably have on their mind, what does the trend look like these days? And, and how has it been in years past? So before we get there, let me just make a quick announcement. If anybody has any questions that's watching the show live, please feel free to pop them in the comments, whether you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or on YouTube. And I'll be happy to ask those questions. We will get Harry to do his best at answering those questions. Put him on the spot, people. That's what we have him here for. He's happy to be able to get those answers out. So, and even if you just want to say hello, just drop a comment to say hi, and we'll be happy to say hello back. So let me share the screen really.
Brian, before you do that, let me go back to something I think is rather important, and that's why is it that we have the trade deficit?
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is it so big? Because again, it went from zero in about 1980 to this 800, 900 billion, and it's a combination of factors. See, sort of at the top level, we're not price competitive, but why aren't we price competitive? I say the U.S. has for decades, essentially 100 years, has had what I call a deindustrialization policy, and all our competitors have industrialization policies. They take our competitor countries take the actions to increase their manufacturing, and we take the actions to decrease our. We allow the dollar to be 20 or 30% higher than the trading goods would allow.
Right.
Right. We have a poor basic education, so the kids, when you want to train them on computers, many of them can hardly read and do math. We do a really poor job of recruiting and training the skilled workforce, the tool makers, the welders, the people like that, compared to what Germany and Switzerland does. It doesn't compare. For many years, our corporate tax rates were way too high, higher than the other countries. So the after-tax return on investment for a factory here was worse than somewhere else. Lots of regulations. We don't have a value-added tax, which would, like with a typical value-added tax in Germany, we ship something there, our product gets hit with a 15% tax. They ship something here, they get a 15% tax credit, and they don't get hit with a tax. Right? So we have very high healthcare costs. So all the listeners know that a significant portion of their overall cost is the benefits they give to their employees. And if we had healthcare costs as low as, say, Germany's, it would knock maybe 5 percentage points out of the labor cost. So there's lots of things like this. And the economists here, we've had the greatest economists, but for years they all believed that trade deficits didn't matter. The only thing that matters is getting stuff at the cheapest price. But eventually, when your manufacturing hollows out too much, everything starts to collapse around you. So government had a lot to do with it. Companies short-sighted, MBAs preaching, get out of manufacturing, just do marketing and finance, and everything else will take care of itself. Underinvesting, we put a fraction as much into I was talking to somebody today from a French capital equipment company, and they said, I go around here and I look at the factories, and they're 10, 20 years behind what we have all over Europe. So when you have the highest wages, how do you compete with the oldest equipment? I tell you, it doesn't work. And workers, you look at workers, the really smart kids haven't wanted to go into manufacturing, so we don't get the smart ones and train them well like the Germans, and they don't work as hard as the Chinese. You've seen the stories about the Chinese. They get up, they do their exercises, and they go for 12 hours a day. And ours, you try to get them to do that, they walk out, they'll go somewhere else.
Right.
So everybody bears some blame for this, but collectively, we got to pull the team together and get the thing going. and so that comes up to how's it doing?
I think a lot of it is going to have to do with the mindset of the companies as well. They're going to have to do a mindset shift to get everybody back into where they would need to be in order to accommodate the facilities and the new manufacturing and the growth that would come.
Sure.
Right.
But the government has to do its part, getting the dollar down and the skilled workforce. The mindset, I think, would follow. If the company saw there was profit there, they know how to go make profit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So I'm glad you clarified all that. It's amazing. It sounds like it would be a lot of work, but it also took a long time to reach this level and on the downside. So,
and it's going to take 20, 30 years to come back. That's why I took on this chore so that I could live for another 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, you got about another 50 or 60. Come on, Harry. All right, so we're all curious to know about the trends, what the trends look like. So I'm going to bring up our screen here. Hang on 1 minute. Let's get that on there. Okay.
That's perfect. So this chart shows the trend in two things. One, reshoring. So General Motors does reshoring, for example, and Toyota does FDI, foreign direct investment. So reshoring is a U.S. company bringing the work back. FDI is a foreign company bringing it back. And back in 2010, when we were founded, in that year, the sum of those two trends was about 6,000 jobs announced to come back in the year. And 2017, the annual total was up to 190,000, so more than 30 times as high. And that was driven in 2017 by the tax cuts and the regulatory reductions. A lot of business enthusiasm, things look great. But then with the trade war, companies lost their confidence, their certainty. They said, I don't know what the tariffs are going to be on what products, from what countries, for how long, and therefore they stopped investing. So you can see how the trend slid off for a couple of years. And now in 2020, and this is the preliminary data, I've actually got final data that shows the blue line, the reshoring came up to about 100,000. So the highest level ever in 2020, but FDI continued on down. So why did reshoring come back? Significantly because of COVID. So in about 60% of the cases from March, when COVID became pretty clear, until the end of the year, the companies that reshored mentioned COVID as one of the factors. And some of those companies did it directly because of COVID, because we've all seen the news programs about the masks and the gowns and the gloves and the penicillin, the stuff that doctors and nurses say, hey, I'm exposed here. I can't get the stuff I need.
Right.
And so maybe half of that surge is companies starting to make the masks and the gowns and the gloves and medicines and things we need. And the other half is companies saying, I saw what happened in the medical field, and I make something else. And rare earth minerals, 5G, some defense products, all kinds of things where the country is not self-sufficient. And these other companies say, I see what happened to them. That could happen to us. And especially if they're very dependent on China, and China periodically threatens to cut off the rare earth minerals or the penicillin or the whatever, the company says, well, I'll be out of business and we won't be supporting the country. And so they're starting to bring the work back. So we see a very nice trend in 2020, and we see it continuing in 2021.
That's excellent. That's good to hear. At least it means that Reshoring Initiative is having an impact. Right?
Yeah, it's not all because of us, but we're the, you might say, the cheerleader and the enabler.
It's whatever it takes to get there. So what does the Reshoring Initiative offer to help companies benefit? So let's I got slide number 2 here. Let's talk about this for a little bit.
Okay. So I mentioned how there's a 20 to 30% price difference between the U.S. product and let's say the Chinese product. Okay, 30%. And so we offer tools that help overcome that, at least the understanding of that. So the blue line that you see here, that's the Chinese FOB or ex-works price as a percentage of the U.S. price. So at 100, they're equal because 1/1 is 100%.
Right.
But at the mode or the peak of the distribution is around 70%. So you might say on average, the Chinese FOB price is 70% of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the 8% down just past the 100% line. That's that 8% of the cases that the users did using our total cost of ownership estimator to calculate all relevant costs. 8% of the cases with price the U.S. won, but when the people used our free online software to calculate TCO, which adds in duty, freight, carrying cost of inventory, travel cost, intellectual property risk, the risk of stocking out, the benefit of having engineering near manufacturing, all these different relevant things, that percentage went up to 32%. And if there happened to be a Trump 15% tariff, then it went up to 46%. So just by doing the math correctly, we say that 20, 30% of what's now imported would come back. But companies have this, bigger companies, the procurement people are rewarded for buying at the lower price instead of at the lowest total cost. So we make this tool available free on our website for the procurement people at those companies to use to make better decisions. But we also encourage the smaller companies, that's probably a lot of your listeners, I would think, the smaller companies, the ones who supply to the bigger companies, to use this to convince their customers to buy from them instead of continuing to buy from offshore.
Absolutely. That is definitely important. Understood. So I guess the question really is, what should companies do and what could they be doing right now at this point to help reshore these opportunities? So we're gonna move right ahead to slide number 3.
Okay, so this describes how we can help those supplier type companies, the supply chain companies, the SMEs. So we have something called the Import Substitution Program, and in that program, a company can identify a product. I'll call it a widget. They're really good at making widgets, and then we tell them who the biggest importers are of widgets, the company name, the address, what tonnage of widgets they're bringing in, what company they're buying them from offshore, and then we train the company to use total cost of ownership, which I just described,
right,
to convince the big company, the importer, that the importer will be 5, 10, 15% more profitable by buying domestically from them instead of continuing to import. So as an example of that, there's a company outside of Chicago called Mori Corp. They make printed circuit boards. They're an EMS company. And they came to me about 5 years ago, the VP sales. He said, "Harry, I'm going to lose a big order. Help me. China has offered a lower price." I said, "Okay." So I helped Tony do the TCO. He took it to his customer. And on our website, we have a quote from him saying that showing the customer that Mori's TCO was lower to the customer, even though its price was higher, was key to winning a $60 million order.
Wow.
Okay. Now there aren't a lot of $60 million orders for most companies, but if some of your companies are routinely, your listeners are routinely competing with offshore, or if they want us to help them identify prospects that they could be taking the business away from offshore, then this is a possibility. And if it's $1 million order, a $500,000 order, we're there. For the TCO, that's free online. Anybody can use it. For the import substitution program, that's this. We charge for that to help them. We got to do work to make it happen. Other things that we do will help the big companies directly train their procurement people to use TCO, and we also have a program for states. We call it supply chain gaps. So with supply chain gaps, we come up with a list of product categories where there's a lot, let's say 100 million a year being imported, looks like nothing being made here. And then for a given state, let's say Florida, where you and I are, okay? So in Florida, we could say, here's the biggest supply chain gaps in the country. Here's cases, the products where a lot of that's coming into Florida or the Southeast. Mm-hmm. Here's the products that a lot of your big companies in Florida are specifically importing, right? And then here's a list of the biggest foreign suppliers that are shipping those products in. And then the state economic development department goes to some of those foreign suppliers and convinces them to put a factory in Florida to meet the domestic demand and overcome that supply chain gap. And once you get rid of that gap, I don't know if you remember years ago, Steve Jobs and also Tim Cook have said, one reason we don't build the iPhones in the US is because so many of the components are not available here. They're made in Asia. So to the extent that we can fill those gaps and make the components here, then it's more likely that the assembly, whatever it is, car, whatever, if you can get the components here, you're much more likely to find it economic to assemble here. So we're working all those pieces together.
So one section can create the other section to be more efficient and more cost effective.
Make it possible to do it. Another thing that we do that I think is interesting, we have an award that we put out along with several manufacturing trade associations, AMT, NTMA, and PMA. And so companies that are in metalworking can apply for that. And the fourth award will be this year. It'll be awarded probably in September. And if they come on our site, they'll see how to link to it. And if they've reshored something or done foreign direct investment with a metallic product of some kind, casting, formed, machined, what have you, they can apply and they can, maybe they'll win. And I'm the judge, so I'll give them a fair shot.
That's great. That's great. So we talked about what companies should do, Harry. Now, what about the government? What should the government do? And what do you think about how Trump and Biden actually would think about this?
Okay, so I had an article in Industry Week about a month ago, and so anybody that wants to look it up, do Industry Week Moser, you'll find. And I actually critiqued Trump's performance, his results, and Biden's proposals, and my conclusion was that Trump wanted to do the right things, but finally the trade deficit grew under his watch, that he did not succeed. And then, okay, so that put all of his efforts together, and he tried hard, all of his efforts together, did not succeed. And then I look at Biden's programs, and maybe half of them I think are helpful, like he wants to have a lower tax for companies that reshore and manufacture here. He wants to penalize companies that offshore. He wants to. He has I think $25 or $50 billion for skilled workforce training. That's great. He's got a variety of things like that. There will help. But he also, I'm not in favor of the 15% minimum wage, and I'm not in favor of. He wants to eliminate states having the right to work, not having to be union members and so on. Those things clearly will not help manufacturing and reshoring. So I say, yeah, you got half of them right, you got half of them not so right. I gave suggestions on how to improve them, but finally I said there's no sign that he really understands that the underlying issue is that our manufacturing costs are too high, and Janet Yellen has said that she wants a strong dollar and he wants a strong dollar, and I want a strong dollar at a lower level. Okay. And they don't seem to have figured that out yet. And if anybody has a good connection there, I'd be delighted to give them some advice, like I gave to President Obama.
That's excellent. I love it. So we talked about what companies, what government should do. what do you think about automating? If we automate to reshore, will automation increase or decrease the number of U.S. jobs?
Yeah. If we were an island and we had only so much production to do, to consume, so much stuff to consume, then clearly automating would reduce the number of jobs. Because you make the same amount of stuff, you do it with fewer people per unit, fewer people jobs. Okay? But we're not an island. We compete with the world, and we've done a horrible job of competing with China, South Korea, Japan, Germany, et cetera. And those companies are investing as fast as they can. In China, the productivity, the units of output per worker hour has been growing at 6 or 7% per year. And our productivity has been growing at 0.4% per year. Now, their wages are a third of ours, and they'll soon be as productive as we are. So if you've got the local components available, your wages are a third as high as ours, and your productivity is equal, they're obviously going to make everything, and that doesn't make sense. So therefore, I say that we will lose more jobs to Chinese automation if we do not automate than we will to U.S. automation if we do automate. Okay, because if we do automate, we'll be able to pull back those 5 million manufacturing jobs, which means we can have significant increases in productivity per year, significant output increases per year, actually need more people, pay them more because they're doing more automated work, and overall be much better off than if we didn't automate. Because my view, if we don't automate, eventually the dollar will collapse, and 30 years from now, the Chinese will send the dirty, polluting work to the United States to get it done like we did to them 30 years ago. And I don't want that for my children and grandchildren.
Yeah, no. So we talked a lot about what reshoring would do. Let's maybe go with an example. If we have a manufacturing company that's offshoring now and wants to reshore, where do they begin?
Like they say, call Ghostbusters. You call China Buster Harry. Okay, so you got our you have or you will have our email address or phone number, website. So you contact me, email me, and tell me what it is you'd like to bring back. Why you haven't, what you think it's going to take, and then I can tell you about other companies that have done it. I can suggest, help you use the TCO to do that calculation so you see if it's feasible. We have thousands and thousands of cases on our website, so you can see if other companies in your industry have done it. If they can succeed, then probably you can succeed. If you're thinking of jobbing the work out, not doing it in-house but outsourcing it somewhere in the country, we have excellent contacts throughout industry, so we can take a look at who might be able to do that outsourced in the U.S. as opposed to in your own factory. So read some of our material, contact me, and let us help you. Somewhere in there, you also have to, if you're going to do the work, whoever's going to do the work has to recruit and hire and train the skilled workforce. They have to invest in the most modern equipment. They got to get their government to maybe give a little incentive to grease the wheels and make the thing happen. There's a piece in here. The workers have to work smart and hard. And if everybody plays a role, then it's very feasible. If people don't, then no.
Got it. So I know that there's organizations in Florida, especially that I know of, that are catering to the manufacturing industry. For example, Grow FL and Florida Makes. I'm sure you know of both of those organizations. Would it be good for us to connect you with those organizations to see how you might be able to help some of the members of them?
I've had phone calls with Grow FL, okay, and I've tried to connect with Florida Makes, and I think unsuccessfully so far, but we're working. Florida Makes is an MEP, Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and every state has them. And we're working with a number of them around the country, and they act as middlemen. They take our efforts like the import substitution program, they take those out and find companies and engage them. And they've had CARES Act money from the federal government to fund that. So I think it'd be a great opportunity for Florida if you've got a good contact at either of, and you might as well send them to either of them, because a good salesman, the more contacts you have with somebody, the better, and the more people like you that recommend us, the more likely they are to listen.
Happy to do it. We have a good relationship with both organizations, and we can see to it to make that connection for you. So that's really good information. We appreciate all of that. Is there anything that we might have missed, Harry, that we haven't gone over at this point?
Yeah, I think we've talked about how to do it, what the government and the companies can do. I think why to do it is also very important. And as we see it, a good manufacturing job with career opportunities, apprenticeship, training, credentials, things like that to move ahead is the best solution to many of the nation's biggest problems. We've seen the crisis in the inner city during the last year. We know about the rural white opioid addiction because the local factory shut down and there weren't any jobs.
Right.
And I saw a documentary where a gang leader in an inner city was being interviewed, and they asked him, why'd you go into the gangs? He said $12 an hour. They said, what do you mean? I couldn't find a job for $12 an hour. And a good apprenticeship now pays $13, $14, $15 an hour for a smart kid. This kid was probably pretty aggressive. Probably would have been good at the company. And and so in terms of giving these people this opportunity, I see retail, because of COVID, because of Amazon, there's going to be strip malls and vacant retail all over the country, and there's going to be workers who used to work there. Why not turn those strip malls into small machine shops and things like that, and give the workers who can walk there from close by a good job with career opportunities, with training programs, with a community college? To me, is the best solution to let them make what they used to sell. Also pollution. We did a study of aluminum die casting, and when it went from being made in China to being made in the United States for the U.S. market, the environmental impact got cut by 25 to 50%. The debt, we're seeing trillions of new debt being taken out, much of it necessary, but someone's got to pay it off. And having 5 or 10 million more people working and paying taxes and not taking safety net and stimulus program would go a long way to making the deficit less and therefore the debt less. So I think there's just, I'm convinced, I wouldn't be doing this if I weren't convinced that the best solution to most of the big country problems is to get manufacturing going again. And I appreciate the opportunity to meet with everybody out there to make that point, and I'm here to help.
Awesome, Harry. I love the idea of what you mentioned about converting strip malls, for example, into manufacturing facilities. There's going to be a lot of empty buildings, unfortunately, out there in the near future.
There's one case somewhere in Virginia that someone sent me about a Winn-Dixie that was converted into a big factory.
Yeah.
So, let's get going.
A lot of them in the past have been converted to self-storage facilities. They could just as easily convert them to manufacturing. So that would be great.
Yeah. A lot more people working in a factory than a self-storage place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Awesome. Well, we really appreciate having you on, Harry. Good luck with everything with Reshoring Initiative. You're doing a fantastic job so far.
Well, let me mention, Brian, if it's only going to be on luck, it's probably not going to get there. It's up to your attendees to take advantage of what I've suggested, to pick up the free tools and go out and bring some work back. And so we always say you can't count on luck or hope. You got to count on just getting the job done.
I couldn't agree more. If anybody would like to reach Harry Moser, it's harry.moser@reshorenow.org, 847-867-1144. His phone is right there waiting, so dial him now. I'm sure he could use some volunteers if anybody even wants to volunteer, right, Harry?
Ready to go, right here.
There you go. There you go. Thanks again, Harry. We appreciate it. Thank you all for listening tonight. If anybody would like to appear on the show in the upcoming weeks, please reach out to us. You can find my contact information at pharusglobal.com. Harry, thank you again. Have a great night.
Thanks, Brian. It was wonderful. A lot of fun.
Likewise.